Welcome in to NFL Spotlight. I am your host, Ari Meirov. We are live right now here on X for the first time actually in 2026. So happy belated New Year to everybody. A lot happening around the NFL. As expected, when Week 18 of the season officially ends, we obviously had a crazy end to Week 18. Ravens, Steelers, down to the wire, missed extra point, missed field goal. Steelers moving on. Ravens out. Obviously, the entire weekend was crazy. Seahawks are the 1 seed. The Buccaneers won, but still got eliminated thanks to the Falcons winning. The Falcons, they won 4 straight, but now they fired their head coach and GM. We have firings around the NFL. It is very, very busy around the NFL. This is a sport that never stops. It's always going 100 miles an hour, and it's probably going 200 miles an hour right now with how much is going on around the NFL. We're going to cover basically all of it here on the show today. And like I said, we are live here. If you're joining us, thank you very much. If you have any questions, drop it in the chat. We will definitely get to it here on the show here today. Let me bring in my good friend and producer, Ben Allen. Ben, what is going on, buddy? For people who don't know, Ben is a Ravens fan. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I told myself as the game was getting dicey last night, I was like, you know what? I'm going to put on YouTube TV. I'm going to drive to the gym, and I'm just going to watch it from there. And there were not a lot of Ravens fans around, but surprisingly some Steelers fans. And for those who are Maryland locals, I was wearing my Old Bay shirt, and a lot of things were being hurled my way as the game goes on. When the extra point attempt was missed, I was like, all right, there's a glimmer of hope. And then we all know where it went from there. So not necessarily the best, but I'm feeling good because I'm back here with you and we're talking football, and 2026 is now in full swing, which means that the end of the season has come here, which means that there's a lot of changes taking place right now, Ari. A lot of changes. You want to start off with the firing that happened last night?
Yeah, this was a team that did not wait, Ben. And, I'll go behind the curtain here for a second because
Raheem Morris, for those wondering, and Terry Fontenot.
Raheem Morris, Terry Fontenot, head coach, GM in Atlanta, were fired last night, Sunday night. I'll take you behind the curtain for a second because for weeks I am reaching out to people trying to find out what's the landscape, talking to agents who have executives and coaches in this cycle to try to gauge what they've heard from team presidents, from team owners, who's going to make a move, who's not going to make a move. We did a live show when the Falcons were 4-9. And I said here on the show that this is the hotspot team right now in the NFL, that other agents in the NFL who have executives and coaches have been targeting, have seen as a hotspot, that something is going to happen. When the Falcons kept on winning, they get to 5-9, 6-9, 7-9, 8-9 after Sunday. I never got the sense that nothing has changed. I still felt like it was a hotspot. And clearly that was the case because this was an ownership group that's Arthur Blank, his son. There's other people in that organization as well. They made their decision weeks ago that they were going to move on from this regime, from Raheem Morris, Terry Fontenot. Raheem got 2 years. And really it all stems back to the decision-making that they made when it comes to the quarterbacks, which was the big first massive decision made by Raheem and Terry Fontenot was signing Kirk Cousins to this gigantic contract, over $100 million guaranteed. And then 6 weeks later, using the number 8 overall pick on Michael Penix Jr. The grand plan was, hey, Kirk is going to be the guy for 2-3 years, then we'll pass it over to Michael Penix Jr., and it's all going to be great. And of course, Kirk starts off really good in his first year in terms of the record. I think they were 6-3. Everything collapses, and then all of a sudden, Kirk Cousins is getting benched and Michael Penix is in as a rookie. And of course, second year gets underway. Michael Penix is the starter, and Michael Penix had a lot of injuries over the course of his college career, suffers another ACL tear, and now here we are with both these quarterbacks no longer as the answer for the future. Raheem Morris, I think in week 13, said we're going to have to look for a different plan here in the offseason. And that's kind of when ownership was like, all right, enough is enough. And Terry was there for 5 years, never had a winning season. You could definitely say that he made some good selections like Bijan Robinson. It's questionable to take a running back at number 8, but he is arguably the best running back in football. Some of their mid-round picks have been great. Both of their pass rushers they took in this last draft, Jelon Walker and James Pierce, have been really, really good. But again, you question the fact that they gave up a future first-round pick in that deal when the pick before or the pick after was the Jackson Dart pick, with the Giants also trading into that slot. They gave up nothing close to a future first round pick. So the overpaying. So when you look at everything together, this was an organization that was like, you know what? We need a true reset. Last time we fired Arthur Smith and we kept the GM. This time we're going to move on from everybody and restart. And when we talked about this when the Falcons were 4-9, I also mentioned there's going to be more changes. And the changes were going to be also at the president level, the CEO level. And that became official also on Monday. Richard McKay, who has been involved with this organization for a very, very, very long time, who Arthur Blank trusts a lot, but he's also a bit problematic. They announced today that he is no longer the CEO of the organization. He is going to move to a different part of Arthur Blank's businesses. We'll see if that ends up holding true. But what I expect to happen in Atlanta right now is as follows. They're going to hire a new president of football operations who is going to be essentially the decision maker of everything going on. That person right now around league circles is expected to be Matt Ryan, who currently works at CBS. I know he also does a podcast somewhere. They have had talks with him for a number of weeks. He's very interested in this job, but there are still questions about if he's going to take this job and move on from all his other jobs. That's still up in the air. If he takes this job, he is going to be the one leading the head coach search and the GM search. It's going to go down to him. Arthur Blank, for years and years, has had a number of different people who he's put his trust in. That's Rich McKay. Thomas Dimitrov was there for a while. He wants to find that new person, and he has chosen Matt Ryan as somebody he's very interested in. If Matt Ryan takes this job and he moves on from his other jobs, he essentially is going to have a big time role over here overseeing the entire operation of the Atlanta Falcons. They've also hired two different firms over here to take control of the head coach search and the GM search to help Matt Ryan if he takes this job. So there are going to be a lot of voices here. I've spoken to some people about the decision making in Atlanta with having a president and a firm and another firm. Feels like a lot of voices, but Arthur Blank, who is an older person, he is looking to get this right. They have not been in the playoffs for nearly a decade now. It's been a very, very long time. They have a very, very talented roster. This is a job that is very attractive to people, but it's a situation right now where people around the NFL are questioning one thing. If you're going to hire a president of football operations, what does the GM do? Because the GM usually has, responsibility over the 53-man roster. Based on the tone that we're getting right now, it sounds like Matt Ryan might have that ability to do it over the GM. So some of these teams who might have executives, they might even block their guys from interviewing for the Falcon job if they don't actually get what a GM is supposed to do. So there are a lot of moving parts over here that are still unclear. So we're going to see how this all unfolds. But the bigger picture here, Ben, is the Falcons and ownership, primarily Arthur Blank and his son Josh Blank. They have been just very dissatisfied with how the losing has been going on. This division finished with a three-way tied 8-9, Ben. The Falcons were eliminated like 6 games ago, despite all that. So, it's a crazy thing when you put it all together. They don't like it. The seats, by the way, in the stadium are not selling out. They need some juice with this organization. So, bringing back a franchise legend, maybe that's going to help. What are they going to do at quarterback? That's going to be up to the next regime, of course. But a lot of questions here. But the way these last 5, 6, 7 years have gone, dating back to Thomas Dimitrov and Dan Quinn, ending to Terry Fontenot and Arthur Smith, Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris. They needed a reset across the organization, and that's what they decided to do. And keep this in mind, NFC South, very weak. 8-9 is the division winner. This is a team that if they get this right, they can be a playoff team next year. This division is very winnable, but they have to get these hires right.
The Matt Ryan element of this really intrigues me because you talk about outside agencies coming in to assist with these coaching searches. It's something, even at the 33rd team, Ari and I weren't necessarily involved in that, but something that, our company worked with the Jets. Obviously, there's differing opinions on how teams should be built, how, things should be brought in. What I find interesting about this situation is you do bring in this firm and then they suggest you get rid of your GM and your head coach. But do you think they were suggesting, hey, let's bring in a quarterback that has absolutely zero front office experience to be the person that's making all these decisions? It seems like counterintuitive when you're talking about getting rid of quote unquote experience and then replacing it with no experience.
Yeah, so I've been trying to get the details on how these firms are working. Sportsology is run by a bunch of people from Chelsea FC. Rick Smith, the former Texans GM, is also part of that. From my knowledge, the entire Matt Ryan part of this, that's an Arthur Blank decision. That's Arthur Blank. Arthur Blank wants somebody he can trust, somebody who obviously means a lot to the Falcons, the organization, what he's done there. Obviously, Matt wants to be involved in football. He's been doing the media stuff, means a lot in Atlanta. That's mostly him. Now it's more about figuring out the rest of the way the organization can be set up over here. And when they did the entire evaluation of the organization, there are some people within NFL circles, Ben, that even though Terry Fontenot was the GM, they still question if Terry Fontenot actually had all the decision making in Atlanta. Like the Rich McKay element in all of this. And Rich is, he's very important with the competition committee. He was with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for many years. He has football knowledge for sure. But when you have a president of a team, which several teams have that is probably the best job in football because you never get held accountable for when things go wrong. If things go right, you're out there next to the owner, you sit next to him, you're doing press conference and whatever. When your team is doing bad, you never hear from the guy. The GM takes the fall, the head coach takes the fall. That has been kind of what people have thought Rich McKay has been doing in Atlanta throughout all of this. And over the last several years, the Falcons have tried to move him around the organization from president to CEO to doing something else with Arthur Blank. As of right now, he's still part of Arthur Blank somewhere. So we're not 100% confident he's actually gone right now, but he's still there. But from what the Falcons are saying right now, he's not part of football personnel anymore. Take that to the bank is what they're trying to tell us. Again, we'll see actions over words because if you watch Monday Night Football, Rams versus Falcons, week 17, they went to the owner's box at one point. And I don't know if how many people caught this. It was Terry Fontenot to the left, Arthur Blank to the right, and slap in the middle was Rich McKay. And you would think that guy's the owner with the way it was looking. So we'll see how this all actually unfolds when everything is all said and done. But the Falcons' vision right now is for Matt Ryan to take over the football operations, somebody the fans could trust, a vision that the fans could be like, okay, we're ready for this new era of Falcons football. And then from there, he's going to have to find a GM and head coach who could work together because the Terry Fontenot, Raheem Morris thing, it was Terry had some say in it, but that was also a bit of a forced marriage in a way because the owner was interested in Bill Belichick at one point. Then Rich McKay and Terry Fontenot didn't want Bill Belichick. So they were like, let's just go after Raheem Morris because Raheem has some familiarity here. That was a very, very messy thing. That's why they're cleaning out everything right now. So Matt's going to come in. Matt, if he takes his job, let's put an emphasis on that. I think he will, but if he does, then he takes the job and he's going to have to find the GM head coach pairing. And we'll see where he goes with who he ends up hiring here. Because like I said before, Terry Fontenot, at least with the job that he did, I questioned some of the things he did, especially the draft trades and the value that he added some of these picks. But when you look at the roster, offensively, defensively, the offensive line, there's talented players here. No doubt about it. They got to figure out the quarterback position for 2026. We'll see what they do there. But running back, receiver, I think Kyle Pitts will be back with a franchise tag at a minimum. Offensive line, defensive line, pass rushers. Xavier Watts, a third-round pick, has been awesome. Jesse Bates has been great. AJ Terrell is a great quarterback. Like, there are dudes on this roster. There just are. But they just can't win. And there's organization that is not in sync. And now it's about getting them in sync. And Arthur Blank realized that. That's why he also hired these firms to do a whole evaluation of the entire organization from top to bottom. And now they're going to try to reset. And like I said before, it's an attractive job. It will be an attractive job. And they've already started a couple of candidates that they want to talk to. Clint Kubiak from Seattle is one of them. They have not done any GM requests yet. We'll see what happens there. But again, this is all going to have to first start with the Matt Ryan part, which we'll see when that happens. From my knowledge, it could happen as soon as today or tomorrow. This is not something that Matt is going to wait, 2-3 weeks for. He's going to make a decision on this very, very soon.
So my question then becomes, you're talking about them needing to bring in a GM. If you are bringing in a Matt Ryan and say he does have roster control, could there be a chance that they just go after a head coach that does have a little bit more say in roster control, a la what Pete Carroll did for at least a portion of the year with the Raiders in, conjunction with John Spytek? Maybe they do bring in an experienced head coach that, plays that role of maybe, a little bit more experience working in conjunction with Matt? Like, could you see there be a situation where they don't bring in a GM and that's just like an elevated title for Matt?
No, I don't want to say yes or no because I don't know, but
Right.
based on the way they've written out their statements, the letters to the team that they put out this morning, they made it very clear. We're going to hire a president of football operations. He's going to oversee a GM search and a head coach search, and that's it. So I expect them to hire all three positions. And this is the way some teams are operating. You see this
It's like
structure
baseball. This is
more in
what
other
baseball does.
sports, right? You
Yeah.
see it in basketball, you see it in baseball. You don't ever see the president, GM, head coach structure in football that much. The Titans have it now. They announced on Friday they've reshuffled it a little bit. Chad Bricker is the president, Mike Borgonzi is the GM, and then they're going to hire a head coach. But in that case, and this is why it's important, and it's very nitty gritty. I don't know if fans really care, but when the Titans announced that, they made it very clear Mike is going to have final say on the 53-man roster. With the way the Falcons announced this, it sounds like the president will have that final say, which in essence, it's like, so what does the GM do? So that's the thing over here they're gonna have to figure out. And maybe just maybe they're gonna do what the Titans did and eventually just reshuffle it again. But as of right now, that is the structure they're going with, and we'll see how it all unfolds. And we'll see how many GM candidates would want that type of a scenario to take that job, because I could see some GM candidates who are, hot guys who could definitely have other opportunities in the future. Like, I don't know if I want this job. I'd rather go somewhere else where I will have the final say somewhere else.
Well, I mentioned his name a moment ago. There is a vacancy now with the Las Vegas Raiders. They have gone another 1-year head coach in and out. Pete Carroll, legendary Seahawks coach, USC, all of those stops. Unfortunately, his stay in Las Vegas was much shorter. Not the most surprising news from somebody who's been kind of following this situation along. What do you make of this?
It just didn't work. It just didn't work. And I give credit to the Raiders for realizing it, because some owners, especially when you have so much dead money with your previous head coaches, you might be like, I really don't want to fire another head coach and his staff, pay all of their contracts. Because think about it for a second, the Raiders, the John Gruden thing, I don't know if they're still paying him, if it's still in a settlement or whatever, but that was a 10-year, $100 million contract. Then they went with Josh McDaniels. They fired him after a year plus. Then they had Antonio Pierce. They fired him after a year plus. And now over here, you fired Pete Carroll after a year as well. That's a lot of dead money on head coaches who you gave 3+ year contracts to all of those guys. So a lot of eating money over here when it comes to the Raiders. But when they hired Pete Carroll, their initial candidate last year was Ben Johnson. He, of course, went to Chicago. Then they did a whole pivot to going, you know what? Let's go find the guy who could set the culture, give us a winning culture, a winning environment, change the mood over here after all these changes that we've had over the years. And they identified Pete Carroll, paired him up with John Spytek. And this thing, we've talked about it a lot of here on the show over the last 2 months. From the start, it felt like it was not going to work. And the reason I say that is because, first of all, the GM, John Spytek, who is very well respected, he got a 5-year contract. Pete Carroll got a 3-year contract. So off the bat, you're on different timelines. And Pete is 70+ years old. John Spytek is a first-year GM who is a scout at heart. He wants to build this roster from the ground up and bring in some young guys and develop them. Pete is about, we got to win now. We got to win now. Let's bring in Devin White and Jamal Adams and Tyler Lockett and Amari Cooper. And we got to win. Trade for Geno Smith. That was his Meanwhile, John is like, let's value draft picks. Let's sign these guys to 1-year deals, and maybe they become guys who could become future cornerstones. Two different visions. It was very, very difficult. Aside from that, you had this situation where the Raiders, whether it was ownership or whoever it was, decided Chip Kelly was going to be the offensive coordinator, which at the time, I liked the idea. I think the Chip Kelly offense, when it's run the right way, it could be really fun. But that was an arranged marriage with Pete Carroll and Chip Kelly. And those two simply never got along, like at all. And Chip wanted to do it his way. Pete wanted to do it his way. It just didn't work. And they gave Chip Kelly this gigantic contract, $6 million per year. And simply put, they never saw eye to eye at all, to the point where, of course, he was fired in season because it was going so bad. It was just not a fit. And Pete had his own choices of offensive coordinator picks and decided not to listen to him. And it got to a point where Chip was hired, but they also allowed Pete to help with the staff because he's the head coach. So he hired his own son. His son was running the offensive line as the offensive line coach, Brendan Carroll. The offensive line is one of the worst in football. Very, very messy. So they realized right away the year started with a 1-0, beating the Patriots, who, of course, are the 2 seed. That was unbelievable when you think about it now in retrospect. But the rest of the year, they only win 2 more games. They beat the Chiefs on Sunday. They have the number 1 overall pick over here in the upcoming draft. This job is going to be very attractive. And I think this is now going to be a situation where John Spytek, unlike the last time, he's going to be running the head coach search on his own. And he's going to be doing it with his close friend and minority owner in Tom Brady, who he, of course, was with him in Tampa Bay. They won a Super Bowl together. They were together at Michigan years ago, but they didn't really know each other that much. Spytek was a previous guest here on the show. We talked about it about a year ago when he was on here. So he's very, very well respected here. It's going to be his vision moving forward. He realizes the situation he's in. He realizes the AFC West produced the number 1 seed in the Denver Broncos, another playoff team in the Chargers, and meanwhile, the Chiefs, who have been dominant in the AFC for a long time, didn't make the playoffs, but they're not going anywhere. He realizes that. They're going to go over here and try to figure out the future of the franchise. And I think they're going to target somebody who's more on the younger side. Obviously, Pete is the oldest that it gets over here, but they're going to try to find a type of mind, whether it's offense and defense, that could be an innovator, a scheme guy, somebody like that who could be a little bit more different and give them an edge that other teams don't have right now. So I don't have names on my list right now. They're going to start that over here very soon. Brady is actually in Las Vegas today, having meetings with people in that organization, including John Spytek, on the next steps moving forward. They knew this was going to happen. They put Brock Bowers on IR. They put Max Crosby on IR. They openly tanked to end the year. And honestly, I'll give them credit. Good job. Got the number 1 overall pick. The Giants have the number 1 overall pick. They're picking 5 or 6 now. So at least the Giants have a quarterback. But they're going to have the number 1 overall pick. They have some cornerstones here. They're going to have a decision to make on Max Crosby, though. And Max Crosby, it definitely sounds like he's more open to the idea of leaving Las Vegas. Again, they could definitely convince him otherwise, bring in a coach that he likes, whatever it is. But considering where the timeline of the organization is right now and where I think they're going, which is a rebuild and a reset over here, would not surprise me, Ben, if Max Crosby could become available this offseason and you take this rebuild and push it forward even faster. Get 2 first-round picks, 3 first-round picks, whatever it is for Max Crosby. You have the number 1 overall pick. You have Ashton Genty. You have Brock Bowers. You have some good offensive linemen on this team who missed time this year of injuries. Colton Miller, the center out of Oregon, Jackson Powers Johnson. All these guys are there for the future. Max Crosby, unbelievable player. Definitely what they want a Raider to be. But I would keep an eye on that situation, regardless of who the head coach is going to be. That is one we're going to be monitoring this entire offseason because the timeline of where the Raiders are, they've realized they're not close to winning right now. They're just not. And if that's the case, maybe we trade one of our best assets, get even more picks, and get a quarterback in the draft, number 1 overall, Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza, whoever it is. And now we're in a situation where we could push this thing a little bit faster. So very interested in this job. Curious to see how it goes, but they realized weeks ago the idea of what they wanted to do with Pete, it was not a good idea. They got to get everybody in the organization on the same page. The entire arranged marriage, let's bring in this guy and that guy and put them all together, it's not going to work. And I expect John Spytek and Tom Brady together to figure that out, and this search will be very interesting to me.
With that being said, obviously Max Crosby, somebody who's become an integral part of what Raider culture is, what that team fabric is, but you do have to imagine, I know you said you don't necessarily have a list of guys that you would necessarily like directly tie to the Raiders, but you would have to think that the head coach and potential first overall pick QB pairing is going to be the most important part of this, right?
Yes. I mean, I would expect them to look at the offensive minds first here, even though the defensive minds is more heavy when it comes to the candidates list this year. I mean, I think they'll take a strong look at Jesse Minter. There's Michigan ties there to Tom Brady. That's a defensive mind, obviously. They'll look at Brian Flores. That's also a Tom Brady connection. Those are guys they could definitely look at over here. But I think when you look at where the NFL is heading right now and how important that head coach quarterback relationship is, if they're able to identify a guy who makes sense to pair up with your young quarterback, I think they'll take a very, very strong look at that because that is the model. Look at what Ben Johnson is doing right now with Caleb Williams. Like the idea of if you hire a defensive minded head coach and then you hire a really good offensive coordinator with that guy, as soon as that offensive coordinator works magic with your quarterback, he becomes a head coach somewhere else. Do you want that to be the case? And that's what I think they're going to have discussions over here with when it comes to ownership and John Spytek when looking at this. Now, the offensive minded pool this year, like I said before, it's not a great one. You might be looking at some guys who are a year away and say, you know what, let's interview those guys. Let's interview a Declan Doyle. Let's interview a Granny Dinsky. Like they might do that because those are guys who I think are a year away or maybe even 2 years away. But Sean McVay, when he was hired with the Rams, he was also a year or two away. And of course, look how that worked out. So that's kind of what I'm looking for over here with Las Vegas, because I think that's going to be a very, very big discussion in that building about how do we pair the important people together here. So they're going to be together for the next 10 plus years and make this organization from all the losing we've had and turn it into winning. So that's what I'm watching over here in these next couple of days. Those discussions are ongoing right now. Their goal right now is figuring out who are those guys we want to interview and who are some of the outside the box names that we could see becoming head coaches here and take our guys to the next level. Maybe it's a Davis Webb, the Broncos quarterbacks coach. These are guys who people are talking about in league circles. Josh McCown in Minnesota, another one. These are guys that people are talking about. If you want to think outside the box, those are some of the names over here that people are talking about right now on the offensive side.
Could you see them leaning into maybe some of those guys that do have those Tampa Bay ties, maybe guys that have been around Brady and or Spytek, I guess?
Tampa Bay, I mean, there's really not many guys out there that you could really think of that would make
But maybe
sense.
not necessarily not necessarily from the Buccaneers currently, but of that tree.
Yeah. On the Brady side, the one that everyone is mentioning, which I have not confirmed, but I've seen people report it, it's the Brian Flores, Brian Daboll pairing. I have not heard that, confirmed that. I don't know that at
What
all.
about Josh McDaniels? Why not?
It's not going to happen. No. But I have not been able to confirm that. But I don't know if, again, there's an owner here, right? We're talking about Brady and Spytek a lot. There's a Mark Davis element here as well. And he's like, I just did Dave Ziegler and Josh McDaniels from the Patriots tree. Am I really going to go through that again? So these are things that are going to have to come up over here. That's why I've been very hesitant to mention the Brian Flores, Brian Daboll element, because you are sort of copying the Patriots element again. And it's like, do we want to go down that path again? So we'll see what they do. But I would definitely keep an eye on the idea of a young offensive mind over there. And we'll see if that's the decision they make. Because again, Ben Johnson was a number one candidate last year. I don't know how people know this, Ben, but I'll give you a story here. Ben Johnson did not want to interview with the Raiders last year. He did not want to talk to them. He told them no. Tom Brady got on the phone, called Ben Johnson's agent, Rick Smith, and said, hey, we're building something different here. We have the money. We'll be able to pay him and his staff whatever is needed. Just give us an interview. And he accepted the interview. He did the interview, spoke to the Raiders. Actually was very intrigued by that situation, but the roster was just so far away. And of course, he took the Bears job. But that was the number one candidate last year. That's a young offensive mind, innovator, scheme guy, culture guy. That's kind of what I think they're looking for. They went to the opposite spectrum after failing at Ben Johnson, where they were still looking for the culture guy, which is Pete Carroll, but of course it failed. But that's kind of what I think they're going to try to do again next year. But they're going to have to find a different type of a candidate because there is no Ben Johnson this year.
Do you think it's fair to say that Pete Carroll was a bigger Mark Davis liked Pete Carroll? Is that kind of fair to say that maybe that was a little bit more of an influence last time? It might be a little different this time.
I think it was everybody. Mark Davis, Tom Brady, like everybody was involved in that decision to hire Pete Carroll, right? They spoke to Robert Saleh last year. Like they spoke to a number of candidates last year. They landed on Pete. It just didn't work. And the arranged marriage of Pete and Chip Kelly was also a mistake. It just was. It just didn't work. Chip never got along with him. And you just felt when you speak to people in that building, you feel something was off. And it just, from the get-go, they won the first game 1-0. Great. Lost the Monday night game versus the Chargers. And from then on, it just fell off a cliff. They had a game versus the Commanders with no Jaden Daniels, and it didn't even look competitive. And it's like, this is going to be a long season. And of course it was. And it's like, you know what? We're going to have to reset. They reset. And I think this is going to be a more organized search right now here.
Well, another team we got to get to has a head coach that very likely could have a job this upcoming cycle already because we're already seeing his name being tossed around, that being Kevin Stefanski with the Cleveland Browns. He was there longer than like I remembered. I felt like he's
Yeah.
only been there a couple seasons, but obviously a former NFL head coach of the year. Um, it just kind of was what it was this year. He worked with what he had, and the results were the results they had. Not totally shocking, but does seem to be a candidate that people are going to look at, right?
Yeah, so a couple things here. Kevin Stefanski getting fired, obviously two-time coach of the year, which is not an easy thing to accomplish. Took Baker Mayfield to the playoffs. His one playoff win, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he actually was at that game. He actually had COVID. He was in his basement. So I know it goes on his resume, but he actually wasn't there. But, one coach of the year with Baker Mayfield, one coach of the year with Joe Flacco off the couch. And then the Deshaun Watson thing, which everyone is going to debate who okayed that trade, who actually wanted him. Did not work out at all. And then this year, with all the quarterbacks from Flacco and Dylan Gabriel and Shador Sanders, there's more to this. It's the fact that he's gone through multiple offensive coordinators, taking away play calling, giving it up, all these different things that have gone on over the last couple of years. And of course, put it together with the no winning at all. That's how it gets to a point where we are firing Kevin Stefanski, keeping Andrew Berry, because like the owner today, Jimmy Haslam, said, Andrew Berry has done a lot of good over here when it comes to this recent draft and some of the trades they've made. Even the Travis Hunter trade, going down from 2 to 5, getting those extra picks, getting Mason Graham. It's working out as of right now. They believe in Andrew Berry. They believe in the rest of the front office, which has a lot of really, really talented people, from Glenn Cook and Catherine Raish and a bunch of other people in that front office who are really, really talented people. The coaching staff needs a reset from the top. Kevin Stefanski is gone. Jeff Schwartz, the defensive coordinator, has been awesome. He might get an interview for the head coaching job over here. We'll see about that. Tommy Reese, the current offensive coordinator, is somebody who I also think is held in high regard in that building. We'll see what they do there. But this is a team right now that has a lot going into this offseason. A lot of cap space, 2 first-round picks, a defense that's really good, but an offense that needs some help over here. They have some good players with, Kinshon Judkins coming off the injury. Harold Fannin Jr. is obviously a good piece over here. The offensive line is probably going to have some reshuffling over here. Joel Bitonio might retire. Jack Conklin's a free agent. Wyatt Teller is a free agent. A lot of moving parts over there, but it's a roster that definitely could most teams, if you listen to the press conference throughout the week, they said the Browns defense will be the toughest defense they faced all year. And we saw it every single game in and game out. And of course, Myles Garrett got the sack record on Sunday. But from a future standpoint, when it comes to all of this, let's start with Kevin Stefanski. I know people are saying, oh, he'll be the top candidate for many people. I think he'll be a candidate. I don't think he'll be the top candidate for everybody. I think we got to slow our horses here when it comes to this, because the way people are talking about Kevin Stefanski, I think he's a really good head coach. I do. I don't think he's prime Bill Belichick over here, the way people are talking about it. Like, people are like, he'll have the pick of his litter. He'll get to pick Tennessee or New York or Las Vegas, whatever he wants, whichever quarterback he wants to work with, he'll get a chance to pick whichever job he wants. I don't think so. I think he'll get opportunities to interview with those teams. We'll see how those interviews go. But these teams are going to have questions also about how these last couple of years have gone when it comes to the play calling and taking it away or giving it up to his offensive coordinator, or taking it away from his offensive coordinators and never accepting the blame. Like, there are things over here of Kevin Stefanski that are not exactly the most perfect thing in the world over here. So I would not race and run to say he's for sure going to get a job. I'll remind people, Mike Vrabel, after he was fired by Tennessee, did not get a job the next year. And Mike Vrabel, of course, is probably the coach of the year this year. So I would not run right away and say Kevin Stefanski is going to get a job over here. As for what Cleveland does over here, I expect their search to be a very, very wide one. And they're going to look at both sides, defensive side of the ball, offensive side of the ball. Like, we've spoken about some of these teams over here about, maybe they're going to focus more on the leader of men, or they're going to focus more on the offensive side. All of them in their press conference are going to say, we're not focused on either side of the ball. We want to get the best head coach. I think this is a situation where they're actually going to cast a very, very wide net and try to see a bunch of different candidates over here and see where that goes. Other teams, like we spoke about before, I think they have a type they're trying to get. Cleveland, going into the search, I don't think they fully know exactly what they're trying to get over here. They just know they needed a fresh start with the head coach, and it was time to move on from Kevin Stefanski. But like I said before, they really, really like Jim Schwartz. If it was up to them, if they could hire a head coach and still have Jim Schwartz as defensive coordinator, I think that would be the ideal scenario for them. So we'll see where that goes. But the reason they did this move was simply because of the way these last couple of years have gone over here with Kevin Stefanski. There's no improvement. The players are definitely better. They've invested a lot of cash into this roster, but it's not getting the results. And it was time for a change. They make a change. And for Cleveland now, for Jimmy Haslam now, he has to hope, and this is a big hope for him, they don't go back to the way they were years ago where they were changing coaches every other year. Because they finally got some stability here where Kevin was there for 6 years. They made the playoffs a couple of times. They won a playoff game. This is a bit of a risky decision as well, in a way, because at least you had somebody who got you into a stable position. And now you're kind of taking a risk because, like people have told me, Ben, you have something in door number one. You have no idea what's behind door number two. So the Browns are taking that risk right now by firing Kevin Stefanski. They want to see what's behind door number two of all these other candidates, and we'll see if any of them are better than Kevin Stefanski. Because I agree, he's a really good candidate. I think he'll get looks around the NFL. He might be a better offensive candidate than other candidates right now in this pool. But like I said before, I don't think it's a slam dunk. He's for sure getting a job somewhere else. So we'll see where that goes. But for the Browns' sake, if they're looking for an offensive-minded guy, Ben, Kevin might have been the best one. And that's the one thing of here they're going to have to look at. So we'll see what they decide over here. But the last couple of years have been very, very disappointing for what they expected, and it was time for a change.
Well, one thing that's not changing is their general manager, Andrew Barry, sticking
Yeah.
around. What do you make of that decision to retain him while moving on from Stefanski?
Yeah, like I said before, they really like their front office. I mean, it's not just Andrew Barry, but really the front office that they've constructed there. I mentioned some of the names of here. Some of these guys are future GM candidates here in the NFL. Glenn Cook has gotten GM interviews in the past. Catherine Raish has come really close to becoming the first ever female GM in football. She's the assistant GM over there as well. Overall, that is a really, really strong front office. And Jimmy Haslam has realized that this is a front office that why would I clean it out? And when you look at the draft class they just had this past year, I think that is the main reason why these guys are staying. I mean, you look at Mason Graham and you look at Kinchan Judkins and you look at Carson Schlesinger and you look at Harold Fannin Jr. and they did draft two quarterbacks, and we'll see what those two quarterbacks become over here. But that is a good core of players of here that they were able to draft, in addition to also getting 3 future draft picks as well, including a first-round pick in this upcoming draft in that trade down from 2 to 5. So there were a lot of cornerstone players that they've been able to get over here. Like I said before, even navigating the Myles Garrett situation last year where the player clearly wanted out and did not want to be there, and Andrew Barry was able to be adamant in the public and in private they're not going to do it and eventually get it back. Those are all things that ownership looks around as like, okay, we have players here that Andrew has brought in who are really, really good. And now it's about the coaches actually getting the most of those players. And to this point, we don't believe Kevin has done that. So that's how the decision was made. I also mentioned one more thing. The Browns had a very, very big change in their front office when Paul DePodesta left and is now with the Colorado Rockies. He had a big voice in that front office as well. He worked remotely, but he was somebody that ownership trusted a lot. Paul DePodesta and Andrew Barry were the two most trustworthy people in that building. With Paul gone, I don't think Jimmy Haslam was comfortable moving on from both of his trusted guys over here and restarting completely. So that played a role as well, and that is part of the reason why Andrew is back. But the bigger reason, of course, is, again, the personnel. We could talk about the Deshaun Watson trade and whose fault that was. That's a whole separate topic. But as of the 2024 offseason and how they handled that, you look at it on paper, it looks pretty good, but the results, obviously, for that team were really, really bad.
Wanted to quickly tell you guys about our friends over at Root Insurance. There's so many ways that we need to improve in our life and our safety and all this kind of stuff. Root Insurance is right there with you. They believe that good drivers deserve better rates. So they created a new kind of car insurance that rewards you for good driving with a very easy to use app while you drive. They gather and analyze data from your smartphone sensors. And after a few weeks, you'll get a car insurance quote based primarily on your driving. And you can test it out before you switch, which really helps you get the perfect way of knowing what you're going to be paying based on your driving ability, which we could all really use a little bit of that feedback in our everyday lives, probably beyond just driving. But, the tech is great. The app is easy to use. It allows you to adjust your coverage, your policy, change, file a claim in just a couple minutes. It's really easy and good stuff to use. So go over to root.com and learn how you can save for good driving. And one of the things that is great about Root is it's obviously great insurance. And we've been hearing a lot about the Cleveland Browns with what their plans are going to be at quarterback moving forward. Do you envision that Shador Sanders is going to be their quarterback next year, or is he more of just like an insurance policy for them?
Insurance policy is a perfect way to explain what Shador Sanders is right now in Cleveland. Andrew Berry spoke to reporters here today. He talked about Shador, said there's definitely some bright spots, some things to obviously improve on, which is normal for every single rookie. But you look at the current quarterback roster. I mean, you have Dylan Gabriel, you have Shador Sanders, you have Deshaun Watson still laying around. You have 2 first-round picks as well. And this is a team that, as Andrew Berry said today, they're going to explore all avenues of here when it comes to the quarterback position because they want it to be more sustained. And as of right now, it is not. So Shador has definitely played into a situation where he'll be on this roster and he'll probably be quarterback 2 or quarterback 3. But I do not anticipate him going into the year as a QB1 in Cleveland. Neither do I think Deshaun Watson will. I think this is a team that will hire a new head coach. That head coach will have a big say on what they do when it comes to the quarterback. And it could be many different avenues, Ben. It could be free agency. It could be draft. It could be a trade. It could be Kyler Murray. It could be Tua. It could be a lot of different names of here. I just don't think right now, as we stand, that it's going to be one of these quarterbacks on the roster. So Shador has done enough to be a viable option in the NFL as a backup for now, but he is not somebody who's going to be QB1 going into next year.
All right, guys, if you're looking for car insurance or maybe switch, go over to root.com and learn how you guys can get rewarded for good driving. All right, let's go ahead and talk about the one other coach that has been fired. Your coach of the year candidate, if I'm not mistaken. RIP Jonathan Gannon and the Arizona Cardinals. Monty Ossenfort, former guest of the show, he is retained by the regime there in Arizona. What do you make of this firing? 15-36 record through 3 seasons. Probably not what they were really hoping out of Jonathan.
Michael Bidwell, the owner, Monty Ossenfort, the GM, they spoke to reporters about an hour ago. I watched the press conference. Michael Bidwell is very straight up. The decision that we made over here is because of wins and losses. Nothing more, nothing less. And before the season started, and I'll take it in the chin right now, I picked Jonathan Gannon to be the coach of the year. I thought this was the year the Cardinals would be taking their big jump, their big leap. It was year 3 of this build, which I have been a big fan of the way they've built this roster. I think this roster has a lot of really, really good pieces and future pieces who could definitely be cornerstones in the future. But it got to a point where early on they started 2-0, and then things completely unraveled. They lost 14 of their last 15 games, and there were a lot of injuries. And I have to say that there were probably the most injured team in football this year with all the injuries they had: running backs, receivers, offensive line, defensive line, linebackers, corners, safeties, punter, everything. Like, they had injuries all over the roster. But to say the least, the way the year went on, it got to a point where these games were over in the first quarter. And at some point, when you're a defensive-minded head coach, especially at the end of the year, and the defense is just not stopping anything, you start looking around and it's like, okay, injuries are a problem. It's a problem for many teams. You can't just blame it on that. So ownership basically said, we like the personnel we have. We like the players that we have. We like the direction we're going in when it comes to roster construction. We don't like where the coaching is. And it's a bit unfortunate because if you speak to people around the NFL, the one coaching staff that I've heard about a lot over the last couple of years that teams are excited about, it's actually the Arizona Cardinals. They have a lot of really, really young, bright coaches on that staff. Nick Rawls, the defensive coordinator, is outstanding. Some of the other coaches on that staff, cornerbacks coach, safeties coach, DBs coach, defensive line coach, names you probably never heard of, but up-and-coming coaches around the NFL. But it got to a point where it just was not – the play on the field was not matching anything over here. And that's when ownership decided a few weeks ago, we have to make a change over here. This was a decision also where Michael Bidwell said, we spoke about it last night. We made the decision. We slept on it one more time. And this morning we decided Jonathan Gannon is out and we're going to restart over here when it comes to the coaching side. Monty Ossenfort, who again, I think has done a pretty good job of here when it comes to the roster, definitely has had a couple of misses here or there. But overall, these are some players here who are definitely cornerstones. Injuries have been a problem. But Paris Johnson, franchise left tackle. Marvin Harrison Jr. dealt with a lot of injuries this year. They're not giving up on him. Michael Wilson, really, really good player as a wide receiver too. Trey McBride, probably the best tight end in football. There are players on this team for sure, but there's also a lot of questions, especially at the quarterback position. But they're going to go into this search again. They're going to try to find, I think they're going to be looking for more of a, um, it's going to be all, again, they're going to look at everything. But I would not be surprised if they try to go the other way this time, where they went with a younger coach, with a younger staff. I think they'll try to go back to the middle of the pack over here and try to get to a veteran coach or a coach who has been in the league for a little bit and bring him in over here. Offense, defense does not matter in this situation over here, from my understanding, in Arizona. So that's where I expect this one to go. And once they hire a coach, big decision to be made on Kyler Murray. And if you listen to the press conference today, Monty Osford said all options on the table of Kyler Murray. Like I said a couple weeks ago here on the show, I think Kyler Murray is done in Arizona, regardless of who the head coach is going to be.
You were talking about all the injuries to the team. You didn't mention the quarterback. He missed the whole back end of the season with that injury.
An injury that I don't think was as significant as they made it out to be. And Kyler Murray has injury guarantees next year. They don't want that to trigger, which is hence why they decided to shut him down the way they did, just like many other teams have done over the years. The Raiders and Derek Carr, the Raiders and Jimmy Garoppolo, the Colts and Matt Ryan, the Giants and Daniel Jones, the Broncos and Russell Wilson. Add Kyler Murray and the Cardinals to that list. But March, the 5th day of the new league year, the middle of March, is when they have to decide on Kyler Murray, because that is when I believe another $17.5 million in 2027 salary becomes guaranteed. By then, they must trade him or cut him, figure something out, but they're going to have a new quarterback next year, regardless of who the head coach is going to be.
There are now 6 vacancies in the NFL, if I'm not mistaken, at the head coaching position. Are we going to expect that there should be more opening up here in the next few hours, next few days?
Yeah, there's a couple more here that we are keeping an eye on. We did hear from a number of teams today who are now making changes. That is the Cincinnati Bengals. Zach Taylor is back. Duke Tobin is back. The Colts said Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard are going to be back. The Giants said their GM, Joe Shane, is going to be back. But then there are other situations right now which we are definitely monitoring. I'm going to start with the Miami Dolphins with Mike McDaniel. As of right now, he's in. He's been talking to Stephen Ross. I believe he's supposed to have his end of season press conference today or tomorrow. I think it's today. So as of right now, he's there. But like it's been reported, Troy Aikman is part of this search. Troy Aikman had a lot of negative comments about Mike McDaniel in that Monday Night Football game versus Steelers a few weeks ago. Dan Marino is part of this search. Brandon Shore is part of this search. Tom Garfinkel is part of this search. Danny Silman, Stephen Ross's son-in-law, is part of this search. They're going to look for a scout type of a GM, scouting background. They're going to try to pair that GM with their current cap guy and Brandon Shore, split up those duties. But from there, they're going to decide on Mike McDaniel from there. John Harbaugh in Baltimore. No one knows what's going to happen. Not the season anybody wanted. Started 1-5, got back to 500. Seemed like everything will be good. Lamar Jackson is back. Lamar Jackson is injured again. You lose the division lead. You get a miracle win of the Cleveland over Pittsburgh. Have a chance to win. Field goal, no good. Season over. Is this the end? That's going to be a discussion between Stephen Bisciotti and John Harbaugh at some point this week. That's not going to be a firing. If anything happens, it's a mutual parting of ways, or they might look to trade him. I don't know. But that's one that we're definitely watching over here. There's always also that team over here that gets eliminated in the playoffs earlier than expected. And that's kind of what I'm watching also. So if Pittsburgh is bounced in the first round, Mike Tomlin. Buffalo is bounced in the first round, Sean McDermott. We're going to be watching those situations as well over here as the playoffs get started. But that's kind of where we are when it comes to all of these situations around the NFL. I don't think I'm missing any more over here. I would like to double check to make sure I'm not. But as of right now, that appears to be where we are. I do think coordinator change. I should probably mention that as well. Coordinator changes around the NFL. Washington, keep an eye on Joe Witt. I would keep an eye on Cliff Kingsbury as well when it comes to Washington. I think a team like Tampa Bay, it does sound like Todd Bowles should be safe. I do think he's going to make staff changes there, so keep an eye on that. Minnesota, Brian Flores, his contract is up. They want to keep him badly, but as of right now, no deal is done there. That's a very interesting situation to watch. Kansas City, Matt Nagy's contract is up. He's already has an interview expected in Tennessee for their head coach position. That is one to watch as well. So there's going to be some other moving parts of here around the NFL. Cincinnati, Al Golden, defensive coordinator, what happens with him? So those are the other situations that we're kind of monitoring here around the NFL as of right now.
We'll definitely get into the candidates here over the coming days and weeks, as we presume that a lot of these guys might be on current playoff teams. So some of these dudes may not necessarily be, jumping ship. And as we've got our friend Jay popping up there, one of the names we haven't mentioned yet, which he stole my thunder as to what I was about to ask, was while he may not necessarily get fired, Matt LaFleur's contract is a little situationally different, right?
Yeah, Malafore is another one, which I probably should have mentioned. We spoke about this weeks ago. I still think it would be a stunner if Malafleur is actually let go in Green Bay. It's after this season is over, he has 1 year left on his contract. They have a new president in Ed Policy who has been in Green Bay before, but he's new. It's like a new owner, basically. And he inherited these guys with Brian Gutekunst and Matt LaFleur. And the reality of the situation for Green Bay is, had the NFL not expanded to this new 7-team playoff format, they would not have made the playoffs the last couple of years. Last few years, they've won the 7th seed every single year. So if they don't make the playoffs at all, for example, is Matt LaFleur still the coach in Green Bay? That's what people have been asking. Considering what they've done there in Green Bay and the roster that they've built and the money they've given to Jordan Love and the money they've given to Micah Parsons and other players there, it's like, why are we moving on from Matt LaFleur when we don't know who are the other candidates who could be better? That's the way people in league circles look at this. I've not spoken to anyone in Green Bay, so I don't know exactly what's going on within that organization. But when I speak to people who are coaching agents, executive agents, other executives around the NFL who follow this stuff closely, they're like, why would Green Bay do that? Like, why would they ever move on from him? Especially when, again, the GM and head coach both have the same contract. Both of them after this year have 1 year left. If you're the new president, why would you okay that big Micah Parsons trade, 2 first-round picks, the big, gigantic contract, and then put these guys in the hot seat? It just doesn't make sense to them. So that's the context as to why Matt LaFleur is always brought up. Obviously, they have a very, very big game coming up. NFC North rivalry, 7 versus 2 seeds over here in Chicago on Saturday, Amazon Prime. Round number 3 of these two teams going up against each other. If you lose embarrassingly to your division rivals, does that change things? I don't know. But within league circles, people would be stunned if the Packers made a change at head coach.
And that's why the NFL is fun, because there's always going to be a lot of change.
And let me just say this. We mentioned Kevin Stefanski before, right? How everyone's like, oh, Kevin Stefanski, if he gets fired, he'll be a top candidate everywhere. I don't think that's the case of Kevin. I do think that's the case of Matt LaFleur. If Matt LaFleur had let go, plans are changing around the NFL when it comes to this coaching carousel.
Yeah, makes sense to me. So let's deal with what we have right now. 6 openings. We've got the Giants job and the Titans job. Titans are already interviewing people, some questionable. Not my job to say who I think is questionable, but maybe not the top destination of these teams. Where do you think the candidates that are going to be looking at these jobs, if we're looking at them as, maybe there's one guy that everyone sees as the top guy, if you're going down that list of desirable destinations, where do you think these teams kind of fall in the pecking order?
Yeah, from what I've gathered over here from, speaking again to these executives and agents, executives and agent coaches out here who have clients in this cycle, the way they've ranked it, their top 3 teams that they're most interested in would be right now the Raiders job, which is number 1 overall pick. Obviously, you're in Las Vegas, but you're in a situation right now where you're going to have an ownership that they believe is actually going to give you time over here. And obviously, they have not given time to other people over here in recent years. But this is one where they actually think is going to be GM in lockstep with the head coach, which was not the situation up until now. So a lot of people really like the Las Vegas situation because $100 million in cap space, number 1 overall pick. They have a lot of draft picks, and you have some cornerstones on that roster. So that is one situation people like a lot. The Giants situation is another one where The problem with that one compared to the Raiders one is Spivak has 4 years left on his contract. You can match up with that contract. Joe Shane, as of right now, has 1 year left on his contract. So if you're taking that job, and there are some really good pieces on the team, including the quarterback, but Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors and Andrew Thomas and Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns and Abdul Carter, a lot of really, really good players, right? But if you're taking that job, you're joining a GM right now who has 1 year left on his deal. So unless ownership extends Joe Shane, you're walking into a situation where the GM could also be let go after a year. So that's one where people are like, we really like the roster. We need an answer on what's going on with the GM situation if he's going to be in lockstep with us. The other one that people like a lot, this will be the final one in the top three, Tennessee. Surprisingly, maybe for some people, they, again, weak division, a division that at least has been winnable in recent years. I wouldn't call it weak, but has been winnable in recent years. Cam Ward looks like a franchise quarterback. You have another cornerstone player in Jeffrey Simmons. And then this past draft for Tennessee, some of the players that they got in this draft, there are players there where they got a lot of snaps this year, a lot of experience this year, and they look like players in this league. And the one thing that people who maybe average fans don't realize this, Mike Borgonzi, their GM, is very well respected around the NFL. Like, he's been around for a very long time. They believe he is the right answer there at GM. So Tennessee has gone through a lot of here in recent years. Borgonzi is somebody that people really, really like around the NFL. Like, I didn't even realize it at the time, but speaking to people around the NFL in recent days, people are like, yeah, I want to work with Mike Borgonzi. Like, a lot of really, really good things to say about him as a GM. So those three right now are teams that I've heard about a lot here in recent weeks and days and all that. So those are the three that I'm definitely watching over here as top jobs. But like I say every single year, there's 32 of these jobs. Not many. If you're able to get one, take it, because you don't want to be Byron Leftwich, for example, who said no to a job and is now not on the NFL anymore. So that's kind of what you're looking at over here. If you get a job, go for it. And these candidates, if they get offered a job, expect them to take it.
Ari, are you expecting any phone calls for any head coaching jobs?
No, I don't expect any phone calls for head coaching jobs, but I am helping a few people here who are looking for head coaches. So we'll see where that goes.
Ari, the advisor. He flashed the
Yeah.
phone up real quick. I didn't see any names there, but you just always keep an eye when Ari's on camera. You might see a name pop up on the front of his screen. It's a little trick here.
You never know. I'll say this one more thing here. We've heard about all the names over here in this cycle, the Jesse Minners and the Chris Shulas and the Jeff Halfleys, Clint Kubiak, Lou Anarumo, all those guys. I'm curious to see which teams interview the guys who are probably a year away, because I think those guys are going to get an interview. And I mentioned the names before. Some of those guys were on the show over here before the season started, which I'll give a shout out to NFL Spotlight. We had 3 offensive coordinators on the show before the season: Grant Udinski in Jacksonville, Declan Doyle in Chicago, Brad Idzik in Carolina, all 3 division winners in 2025. Pretty cool. But when you look at the guys who are maybe a year away who might get interviews, 2 of those guys for sure, Grant Udinski, Declan Doyle. I think those are 2 names who probably not for sure head coach ready, but I think are guys who could definitely get interviews this cycle.
That's some other guys, stupid young.
Still not 30 years old. Like, that's how young they are. Yes. But other guys out there, Anthony Campanelli, defensive coordinator in Jacksonville. I think he's a name over here who is really, really young, but I think could also get a head coach interview or 2. Davis Webb is probably the most intriguing one for me, and we've been trying to get him on the show for a while. Has not happened. Quarterbacks coach in Denver, has been wanting to be a coach his entire life, even when he was a player. He is somebody who is viewed as a future head coach. That's another one where it's like we could hire him now. Never had any coordinator experience, but he could definitely become a head coach. Let's get him now. So in a year where the cycle is not so great, I'm curious to see which teams at least interview those guys. And if a team actually takes a chance and is like, you know what, we're going a year early for sure, but let's just swing for it, because these other guys are not slam dunks either also. So
it's like investing in them as prospects, right?
Yeah. The problem is, like, if the locker room does not respond well to these guys, is like year one could be a disaster. But if they do, and you're able to get a Sean McVay, which everyone says Sean McVay, but Sean was hired when he was 30 years old, which at the time was as unheard of as it gets. Like, the last time we had anything similar was back in the day of the Oakland Raiders and Lane Kiffin. Like that was the last time we had anything like that, and that was a disaster. So the Rams took a big swing, and they were obviously very successful. And we spoke about the Cardinals before. Here's a story for you, Ben. Maybe fans don't know this. Michael Bidwell, Cardinals owner, also interviewed Sean McVay before the Rams hired him. Blown away by him. Blown away. He was 29 at the time. Michael was like, how do I hire a 29-year-old head coach? Passed on him. They hired Vance Joseph instead. A year later, Sean McVay gets hired by the Rams. The rest is history in that division. So, again, if you think you could find the guy who's maybe a year away and get him now, that might be the move. So, I'm curious to see. This is the year to do it. There's no Ben Johnson. There's no Mike Vrabel. There's no Liam Cohn. There's no Aaron Glenn from last year, who obviously had a terrible.
Hey, there might be a Bill Belichick though.
Yeah, there is a Bill Belichick, but this is the year to swing, and I'm curious to see who swings this year.
Yeah, for sure. Want to talk a little bit about some of the football we've got coming up, because there is obviously a lot to get to as far as the playoffs being set, teams that made it in, teams that didn't make it in. Want to give a shout out to our friends over at FanDuel. They help us run here on NFL Spotlight. New users, you haven't signed up yet, it's not too late to get in on the game. You bet $5, you win that, you get $250 in bonus bets. So head over there to Ari is just throwing up Ari Coach of the Year. Thanks, Kendall. I appreciate it. Also, my Ravens suck. I'm aware. Head over to FanDuel.com. You can't bet on the Ravens anymore because they're out, but maybe you can start looking into futures and all that kind of stuff right now. Our editor, Uri, not to be confused with our host, Ari, always likes when we talk about the Chicago Bears. So we're going to talk about the Chicago Bears and their playoff game that they have coming up here against the Green Bay Packers. I like to say Chicago's his team. He lives in Chicago. He's actually a Packers fan. He's smiling somewhere right now.
Okay, I'm sorry. I know we're doing a FanDuel segment right now. I don't know the line. There is no way that line is right. There is no chance that line is right.
Are we going to really fact check him right here, right now? Because I believe he is right. Right now, if you go on to FanDuel.com, which is a wonderful site if you've never been on before, and it looks like as if -1.5 Green Bay Packers.
The Packers are favored in this game?
Packers are favored in this game, much to his enjoyment. And the line is 45.5 points. No one trusts the Bears. No one trusts
I'm
the
stunned.
Bears.
I'm shocked. I'm shocked.
You think that the Bears win this? Do you think they win handedly or something?
I don't think they win handedly, but I have we watched the Packers the last few weeks? Like, am I crazy or something? I mean, like, I know Jordan Love has missed time, but as soon as Micah Parsons tore his ACL, I just think like that was the gut punch of all gut punches for this team. And of course, losing to the Bears in that Saturday game a few weeks ago, which ultimately decided the division, essentially, I'm going with the Bears to cover this number for sure. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
Well, that would mean essentially with 1.5 points. Unless you think it's going to be a 1-point win, but
if you made me guess the lines before this, I would have thought the Bears are at least in Chicago. I mean, are we serious here?
Yeah. That's wow. Again, that's these are pros. They know how to go in and set these lines. I mean, 1.5. I mean, it's not a gigantic line by any means, but clearly people think the Packers they're going to win.
I mean, listen, the Bears have lost back-to-back games. The loss of the 49ers, I wouldn't be, holding my head down on that one. But this last game to the Lions was obviously very, very disappointing. The Packers rested their starters. I get all that. I just feel like ever since the Micah Parsons injury happened in Green Bay, it was just such a gut punch to the entire organization, the entire team. They're a 7 seed over here. Jordan Love has recovered from his concussion. Malik Willis we'll see if he's the backup over here in this game. But I have Chicago. That place is going to be rocking. Playoff football in Soldier Field. The last time they had it, if I'm not mistaken, was the double doink game. So it's been a while. Ben Johnson, if you watch his press conferences he's had since the loss yesterday, he looks pissed off. He looks very fiery. He's told his team we're on to this next season for us because regular season is over. We're restarting the season now. So they're going to move on from these last couple of losses and get ready to get the season started here. I'm just shocked that a 2 seed versus 7 seed, with the 7 seed losing arguably their best player, going on the road to a raucous environment is favorite. I'm shocked by that. So my pick over here for new FanDuel customers is the Bears are going to cover plus 1.5.
It looks like the stats would agree with you too. I mean, I think takeaways obviously play a major factor in who ultimately wins these games. It's going to be fun. I'm excited. I don't think there's a clear favorite this year. So I just think all these games are going to be fun and exciting.
I couldn't even give like proper analysis on this game because I'm just shocked by that line. I'm just shocked.
Well, okay, Ari. Well, again, thank you to our friends over at FanDuel. Help us stay powered and do this show every single week, which we absolutely love doing. What do you think about the rest of the slate of games? What do you think about what we've got going on here for the upcoming week?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great wild card schedule, like awesome schedule. Rams Panthers, like I don't think anyone is like super excited that the Panthers are in the playoffs, but the Panthers beat the Rams a few weeks ago in Carolina. It was a rainy game. The Rams were super hot going into that game, and everyone thought the Rams would destroy the Panthers in a game, which I'll remind some people, Trevon Merrick was out, JC Horn was out, and the Panthers still won, and those players will be back in this game. So that game to start off the playoffs will be very interesting. And, it was a bit shocking a little bit to me, but the Sean McVay, who rested his starters last year in week 18, decided to play his starters this year in week 18 because he was so disgusted by the week 17 performance versus the Falcons. So we'll see how that goes over here in this game, but they should get Devontae Adams back. I don't think Kevin Dotson, who is an outstanding guard for them, former guest on the show over here, I don't think he's going to be ready for this game. So that's a big loss for the Rams offensive line. But Devontae Adams should be back along with Puka Nacua, of course, who has been awesome over here in recent weeks. Packers, Bears, we just spoke about that. Bills, Jaguars. The Jaguars are, I tweeted this yesterday. I'm curious to see if they use my misspelling of their name in my tweet yesterday as motivation. We'll see if that ends up happening. But playoff football in Duval coming back. I said this a little bit on the show before. This is the year for Buffalo. I mean, when you look at the quarterbacks in this AFC right now, no Burrow, no Lamar, no Mahomes. This is the year where Josh Allen, he's the best quarterback of all the quarterbacks here. He's got to go out and take it. And it's going to have to happen on the road. For me, I'm watching this very closely. If the Jaguars pull it off over here, I don't know what the lines are. I don't know who's favorite. I don't know who's upset. Go to FanDuel to check it out. If the Bills lose this game, I think there will be a Sean McDermott watch in Buffalo. So keep that in mind over there in that game.
Bills are 1.5 point favorites. Bills are 1.5 point favorites.
All right.
On the road. On the road.
Showing that.
Just like the Packers.
Liam Cohn is showing that to his players here right now as we speak. 49ers and Eagles. I feel bad for the 49ers, man. Like, they had this entire thing in that organization, Ben, of we're going to win out. We're going to play our last 2 games at home. Every playoff game at home. Super Bowl at home. It's going to be a magical ride. And, of course, they lose on Saturday to Seattle. And now your welcome is go back to Philadelphia and face the Eagles and those crazy fans. So it's been a pretty cool story for the 49ers this year. When you talk about all the players they lost, from Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, and George Kittle has missed a lot of time, and Brock Purdy has missed a lot of time, and their first-round pick, Michael Williams, is out for the year, and Trent Williams has missed time, and Ricky Pearsall has missed time, and they're just finding all these random players out here who have been awesome, and now you have to go on the road. It's going to be an uphill battle for them, and they just played a war on Saturday versus the Seahawks. The Eagles, meanwhile, they're like, yeah, we don't care, 2 or 3 seed. We'll rest our guys over here. So that already makes it an uneven matchup to me. If the Eagles somehow find a way to lose, I just know the Philadelphia media is going to be like, oh, Nick Sirianni, what's going to happen to him? He'll be fine. I do have questions about Kevin Patullo, the offensive coordinator, whenever this season does come to an end. Chargers and Patriots, another really, really good matchup. Chargers made the decision to rest their players. Patriots made the decision to play their players. As soon as it got out of hand, they took out their players. This is a dream matchup when you talk about 2 coaches, Mike Vrabel, Jim Harbaugh. Fun storyline for me, Ben. Maybe I'm the only one who thinks about this stuff. Mike Vrabel was the runner-up to the Chargers job 2 years ago that ended up going to Jim Harbaugh. So now he gets to face the Chargers here in this game. Then Texans and Steelers to wrap it up. D'Amico Ryans, Mike Tomlin, two excellent head coaches over here. Steelers always find a way to make the playoffs. They do it again. Once again, it'll be in Acrisure Stadium over here. The Texans offense, it's been a bit ugly here the last couple of weeks. That Raiders game was bad. This last game over here, this past week was a little bit better without Nico Collins, who they rested, and eventually Davis Mills came in. We'll see over here how it ends up going. The Texans defense has been great. For whatever reason, Riley Leonard was actually shorting them yesterday, but I think they'll be better over here going into this game. The biggest difference when it comes to all of this, DK Metcalf is back for Pittsburgh, and that is enormous. I mean, if they would have lost last night to the Ravens, I mean, the amount of people who would have that picture of that Lions fan being like, the Ravens made the playoffs because of this dude, it would have been all over Twitter timelines and NFL history and whatever. So they made it in. DK is back, and they can run their offense as normal over here. And Aaron Rodgers' NFL career continues for at least one more week. And based on his comments as of late, Ben, it sounds like he wants to come back for one more year again. So maybe, just maybe, his career is not all the way over just yet.
I can't with this guy. It's every offseason. Ever since you and I have been working together, it seems like we have like a section. We probably have so many hours just specifically talking Aaron Rodgers, from back with Trey Wingo to all the way now, January 5th, 2026. I almost said 2025. I think I said 2025 earlier in the episode. That's pretty bad. I can't get dates straight. Everything is a mushy mesh in my head right now. Do you want to talk about any of the stuff with the extensions that we saw with Charles Cross, Quentin Lake?
Yeah, I mean, sure. I mean, the Charles Cross one is probably the more notable one over here in Seattle. 4 years, $104.4 million. And I think the bigger story here is just the crazy hot streak John Schneider is on right now. I mean, the GM in Seattle, we spoke about him a little bit over here in recent episodes when we had Alonzo Highsmith and AJ Highsmith on the show. AJ said, hey, you got to get John Schneider as a guest, because what he's doing in Seattle, I don't know if it's because they're on the other side of the United States and no one talks about them. Like, they are on a crazy hot streak. When you look at their first and second round picks in recent years of the year, this past draft, Gray Zabel, Nick Minowari, awesome. Byron Murphy the year before, Devon Witherspoon, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Derek Hall, Zach Charbonnet in 2023, Charles Cross, Boye Mafe, Kenneth Walker in 2022. Those were all just first and second round picks that I just mentioned. You look at some other picks as well: Abraham Lucas, Kobe Bryant, Rick Woolen, AJ Barner. I mean, they are crushing draft picks. Free agent signings, Sam Darnold, even their kicker, Jason Myers. How about even when you look
Moving
at
off of Geno?
Geno and Russell Wilson and Pete Carroll and hiring Mike McDonald. Like, when it comes to pressing the correct buttons, John Schneider has got it. And I'll say this. We've talked about GM candidates a lot before. Who's going to be new GMs or whatever. Nobody talks about Seattle's front office. I don't know why. And I don't know if people even know people who are there besides for John Schneider. But I'll give a shout out to two people. Their names are Nolan Teasley and Matt Barry. Those two guys should get GM interviews. And for whatever reason, they're not. When you look at what Seattle has done, it's been awesome. And now it's time to pay some of these guys. Charles Cross has actually missed the last few games over here and has been a bit apparent on the left side. He should be back over here for when they play in the divisional round, once they figure out who they're playing, because, of course, they have a bye. But he has been a great story, and keep this one in mind as well. The third offensive tackle taken in the draft was Charles Cross. First was Ike Ekwonu. Then was Evan Neal. That's a Joe Shane bust over there. And then, of course, we have Charles Cross, so who has been awesome for Seattle. But shout out to the Seahawks front office for what they've been able to do and how they've built this awesome roster.
Shout out to Joe Shane, making it through another day there in New York. Joe Shane hanging on.
I do have one more thing I want to say here before we go. I have a feeling this is bold prediction, Ari. After seeing week 18 and how it all unfolded and how many teams rested starters and how many teams, just don't, it looks like week 4 of the preseason or whatever, week 3 of the preseason. I think the owners strongly consider this offseason of having the seeding, taking away the division stuff, 1 to 7, whoever, that's the way it's going to go moving forward. I don't think they like the whole 8 and 9 division winners. They considered it last year. I just think there can be some sort of change over here. to make week 18 more competitive. Because if the Browns didn't beat the Steelers in week 16, that AFC North matchup does not happen.
Right.
And if the what was
There
it,
were
the
only like
Bucks
3
and
games
Falcons,
that really mattered. Well, the Saints
right,
game ended up mattering, so 4 technically, but
right. I just think they're going to change something over here this offseason when it comes to, because I know the way owners think, I know the way the media people at the NFL think. They treat these games as pieces of real estate, basically.
Mm.
If week 18 looks like that and these games don't matter, that's not enticing for, the Amazons and the ESPNs and NBCs and whatever, because you got to fill those spots up. So they're going to do something to make week 17 and week 18 more interesting. And they're going to change something when it comes to seeding or divisions or whatever it is. And I think that's going to happen in the owners' meetings this offseason. So that's my bold prediction right now as of January 5, 2026. We'll see what happens in March when the owners meet. But I have a feeling and a hunch owners and executives and Roger Goodell did not like the way week 18 ended up going.
fair enough. Anything else, Ari? You ready to get out of here?
I think we went for an hour and 15 plus minutes, and we should be good to go. It was good to be back, Ben. I mean, obviously,
Ooh,
we didn't.
miss your
We
face.
were kind of off for about a week. We had a positive moment in my world. I had to take a bit of an off. We won't talk too much about what it was, but very very happy stuff happening in the Meirov family. So as a result, we decided to put the show on hold for a second. But we are back. The offseason has started for 18 teams, and the season continues for 14 teams, and we will cover all of it here on NFL Spotlight. And that was a live edition of the show here today on January 5, 2026. We will be back here later this week. We probably will go live again, and we will see you then.